to Walking Down the Manny Road. I'm Chris Mann and I'm the founder and editor of Burnden Aces. It's been a while since our last trip into the podcast world, but when opportunity knocks, sometimes you just got to take the moment. My guest today is a striker who has gone through 3 separate spells as a Bolton player, featuring under 2 different managers and scoring a combined total of 21 goals in 75 appearances. Since leaving Wanderers, he's swapped the backdrop of Middlebrook Retail Park for the Sydney Opera House. He's currently in quarantine as he prepares to join 20 million others in the Indian city of Mumbai. Our guest on episode 8 of Walking Down the Manny Road is Adam Fondre. Welcome, Adam. How are you? How are you finding quarantine?
Hi, mate. Yeah, I'm great, thanks. Yeah, it's not too bad. Obviously, you get to sort of the wit's end of things when you're in your own head in isolation for 2 weeks. But everyone's had that. I'm lucky the club here have put on a lot for me, where they've put a bike on the balcony, some gym equipment as well to help me keep fit, and I keep getting obviously sent, doing 2 sessions a day and workouts so that I'm fully ready to go as soon as Saturday comes, and I can't wait and to start training again and getting a touch of the football.
What stage are you at the minute? Just did a little bit of research early today, and I believe the season doesn't start for another 2 or 3 weeks yet. So how long are you in quarantine for? When are you able to actually join up with your new teammates?
Well, I'm obviously on site with the squad now, but I come out Saturday, so I can start training Saturday from my obviously isolation period. And then we've got, I think the season starts on the 23rd or 24th of November, around that time anyway, for the first game. So I've got like 3.5 weeks to get ready and fit some games in and get some fitness work in and get myself ready.
Right, excellent. So we'll come back to your time at Sydney and obviously your new move later on in the interview, but we'll start right at the beginning of your first spell at Bolton. So you're a local lad with Stockport roots, and you started your career with your hometown club before going on to represent Rochdale and then taking in a tour of the UK with Rotherham, Reading and then Cardiff. Yeah. Things have gone quite smoothly until your time at Cardiff, which brings us to January 2015 and moving back to the Northwest when you joined Bolton on loan for that first time. So how did that move back in January 15 come about?
Well, to be fair, I'd been playing the whole season at Cardiff. I'd been pretty much the first choice striker, but I was not enjoying my football. We were playing in a way where it didn't suit my style of play. I forever seemed to be nowhere where I was needed to be. I was nowhere near the box, or I was forever in the channels chasing, lost causes sort of thing. And it was sort of a detriment to me as a player and probably Cardiff as a club as well at that point. I think 2 clubs approached Cardiff in January to take me on loan, Huddersfield and obviously Bolton. And I think we played Middlesbrough away on a Tuesday night, and I didn't come on. I was an unused sub that game actually. But prior to that, the manager had said, "Look, we're looking at letting you go out on loan. You can go on loan if you want," sort of thing. So when I received a phone call off Chris Powell the next day, I was having lunch with my wife and I had a phone call off him, and he was saying, "Look, I'd love you to come to Huddersfield. I think you'd be a great addition. I can see you doing really well and doing lots of good things here, etc." Which was, it was nice. Obviously, it was flattering to hear that. And then, funny enough, I think I was on pickup for my daughter from school, and then Lenny rang me. And it was like chalk and cheese from the conversation. He was effing and jeffing. He was like, "You're not going anywhere. You're coming here to me. You know how long I've waited to sign you? Come and play for me." And obviously, pandering to my ego, which was something I wanted. He was like, "You're going to have loads of fun. You're going to score loads of goals. Don't worry about anything. I'm desperate to sign you." And it sort of made my decision a lot easier. And then obviously I said to Cardiff, like, "Look, I want to go Bolton. I want to go and play for Lenny. Or can we make that work," sort of thing. And Cardiff were great with it. They said, "Yeah, sure." And obviously my loan spell didn't start until I think it was about the 8th or something like that. Or it was later on in the month because we couldn't do a half-season loan for some reason. So I missed out on the Rotherham game. So I had to stay training. I stayed training at Bolton with Cardiff's permission up until the point I actually signed, which was like the day before the game of Wolves. But obviously I was already training with the boys and prior to that, and I was fully like adjusted with the squad and that, so which was good. I walked into a really good dressing room as well.
If memory serves, I think that Rotherham game was the one where we got thumped. Was it Boxing Day or just after Christmas? So it's probably a good job that wasn't your first game in the end, really.
And I think it was when Millsy played up front. Because I wanted to play that game because that would have been the first time I'd been back to Rotherham as well and been back to the New York Stadium. So I was like, oh, I'd love to play that. But that would have meant I would have missed the Birmingham game at the end of the season. So they were like, well, no, you're not missing the end of the season. We'd rather you miss this one game and then, obviously you come in for that.
He debuted in a 2-2 draw at home to Wolves and played the following week in a heavy defeat at Derby before Stroke got you off the mark in a 3-1 win over Fulham. You mentioned on social media last week that was the 40-yard tap-in after the goalkeeper miscued a clearance. That sparked a run of form, which saw you end the campaign as top scorer with 8 goals from 17 appearances. Being at the club for only half a season, what did it mean for you to finish as top goal scorer? And in general, how do you feel your first run at Wanderers went?
Yeah, it went really well. I was really excited to play for him because they were creating chances. Every time we played, it felt like I was going to score because it seemed like if we clicked, we were creating chances at will. And especially when it was me and Cloughy up top. I think everyone remembers the Watford game. I think, honestly, memory serves right, that game I should have had 4 goals and Cloughy should have had 4. It could have been literally 10-all or anything like that. We were a real exciting team at that time. And for me, that was great because, we had Fino on the wing, Pratt's Industry cutting in from the left. It just created a lot of chances for me. And, that's what I wanted. I wanted chances. I've been starved at them at Cardiff. So that's all that sort of fed into me as a player was, get the ball in the box and then, hopefully I'll do the rest. And predominantly I do. So, I was really happy with that and excited. To be fair, looking forward to what I do next season with a full season with Lenny. That was what sort of my mindset.
And we'll touch on that in a little bit, but you just mentioned Zach Clough there. And it was during that first spell at Bolton, you obviously got the chance to play alongside Clough, but 2 other names that you got a chance to train and play with were Ida Johnson and Emil Heskey. Despite those 2 being in and around the team, like you said, it was the partnership with Zach Clough that got fans out of the seat, really looking forward to the future. Which you've just mentioned yourself, you were sort of looking forward to that future as well. So I'll ask you about Johnson and Heskey in a minute, but starting with Clough, what do you think it was about you 2 that just clicked? And looking at the way Clough's career's gone at Forest since, are you a little bit surprised to see that he's not involved at all and hasn't been for maybe 2 or 3 years now either?
I think very highly of Cloughy. I love playing with him. He's such a clever footballer, mobile, works hard. And for me, it suited me down to the ground. A 10 drop. Well, he's a 10 who drops off the front, gets on the ball, and creates chances. So for me, that was great. Obviously, I'm predominantly used with a big man, and then me sort of playing as the single 9 with Cloughy floating behind me. It really worked out for me as a player because it sort of broadened my game as well. It means obviously I can link up and play with him and we can play nice 1-2s and try to unlock defences that way. Instead of the sort of normal of, you hit a long ball and I'll sort of stay out of the play for the time being and, sort of do my stuff in the box at the end whereas it was a bit more balls to feet to me when I played with Cloughy especially. With like his career, I think he's been hard done by with, obviously injuries and then even at Forest, I think obviously when he went there, he got his chance and was playing and was scoring and was doing well. But I think obviously Forest is a massive club, and with the takeover that they always had an influx of players who they spent a shed load of money on. Do you know what I mean? So it sort of pushed Cloughy right back down the pecking order, and I think obviously he had a bad loan spell at Rochdale where he didn't get fit really. He struggled with a couple of injuries, which was, in football is which I've had experience of myself when I went to Wolves and had a terrible season there. You sort of get forgotten about and you sort of get left behind. And I think for Cloughy, that's probably happened to him now, but he's got more than enough time to, to rectify that, because he is a fantastic player. I just think he needs the right manager to, accommodate him and give him sort of the love he needs as a footballer and to showcase his talents, because he is a special player. And I feel bad for him the way he's sort of stagnated at Forest and not really pushed on, because when he was playing for me and when he was at Bolton, the world was his oyster. And even the time in League One at the start of that season, he had 10 goals by January or something like that, or around that. So obviously I think the world of Cloughy. I think he's got a great chance of still having a great career. Obviously he's got to get out of Forest first, but I'm sure that will come.
Yeah, and he also had a loan spell at Bolton as well, where again, you said he had a bit of a rough time of it at Rochdale. He just didn't look fit when he was back at Bolton either, and through no fault of his own, playing out on the left wing. If we were ever going to get the best out of him, that wasn't the time. And again, like you say, he needs to get out of Forest. Fingers crossed, either in January or the end of the season when his contract's up, he can find that right club.
Yeah, definitely. To be fair, when he came back, that time in the Champ when he came back on loan, I was buzzing. I thought, yes. Because obviously Gaz had gone then. So I thought, it sort of forces his hand to play me and Cloughy and say, look, let's have a look at me and Cloughy. Let's have Sammy out wide and Phil out wide and let's go that way. I thought we were going to go that way. And then unfortunately it didn't. I think obviously the way the gaffer seen it was that it may have left us a little bit too open to have me and Cloughy playing, obviously the smaller players. So, it didn't really, transpire that really. It was either me or Cloughy playing. If Cloughy was out on the left or wherever he was playing, it was unfortunate for him. He didn't really get, a proper run at it at that time. And like you say, I think it's hard to come into a club in January. I did it in the second time I come back. It's hard when you've not been playing the first part of the season to get up to match fitness straight away. And, especially in the Championship, it's even more demanding.
So we'll move on from Zach Clough now, and we'll bring it back to two names that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So Gudjohnsen and Heskey. You'd played in the Premier League yourself, so you had the opportunity to share the field with some big names and also against some big names too. But what was it like to be around players like that on a daily basis, players with international experience and, in Gudjohnsen's case, a Champions League winner as well?
Yeah, obviously they're both top players and still added a lot to the squad. Besides just experience, they added a lot of quality. Ida still had obviously a great touch and still have a real eye for the pass. I think he even scored a couple playing up front with me. I think he scored against Reading when I set him up for one. Maybe Fulham at home as well. I think he may have scored. So obviously he was still contributing. And Big Emil, to be fair, I love playing with Big Emil as well, because he was an animal still. There was no way he was slowing down. He was flying past people. I remember the Brentford away game, I remember ringing my friends after the game, and I was like, Heskey's just absolutely abused people. It was like throwback years. It was. I do really enjoy that game, and I enjoy playing with both of them because they were great people as well. When you play with big players like that who've had great careers, they're often seen as, arrogant or whatnot. But they were two really nice people, very down to earth, very welcoming, and always had time to speak to you if you wanted to speak to them and pick their brains about things.
I think especially in Gudjohnsen's case as well, a lot of people forget about it because of the clubs he went on to play for, but he actually had a couple of years at Bolton at the beginning of his career as well, so he already had that connection with the club, with the fans, and you knew it wasn't sort of just one last big payday, as much as Bolton shouldn't really be given that tag anymore. But that first season that you were with Bolton, that first half season, we finished 18th after a rough start. We managed to pull away from trouble in the end. And there was a fair bit of optimism about the squad that was being assembled by Neil Lennon going into the next season. Obviously, before things started to go wrong and the rug were pulled from under him a little bit. But talk to me about Neil Lennon. We know he's had success up in Scotland, but what was he like to work with, not just as a manager, as a coach, but off the field as a man as well?
Yeah, I really enjoyed him. I had one of the most productive spells in my career with him. I think if I would have done a full season with Bolton the following season, that I would have easily scored 25 goals in his system. And I think, the impending relegation that followed wouldn't have happened. That's how highly I've thought and enjoyed my time with Lenny. He's a very fiery person, but he's a very open and honest person with it as well. He was there to apologise if he thinks he's in the wrong afterwards as well. Yeah, I had an argument with him after one game, and he rang me that the following night to apologise for it and say, look, obviously I was a bit heated, etc. I apologise, etc. And I was just like, that's no problem. It's water off a duck's back sort of thing. I expect that when we don't play well to get that. And he was just like, yeah, of course. I just obviously don't want you to, get upset with it or whatever, or think I'm, just going at you for no reason. That sort of thing I really enjoyed because, it sort of put me at ease with him as well, for my obviously state of mind and his state of mind as well. So I loved Lenny as a manager. I thought, obviously we didn't have great results all the time there, but I think obviously he was still working out the squad for next season. And obviously, like you say, the financial troubles, I don't think he knew how big they were before he walked in there. And then obviously the season after, it sort of became apparent of what's going to go on.
Yeah, and you've mentioned yourself, if circumstances had been a little bit different, then you might have stayed on for that following season. But with your initial loan move at an end and still having 2 years on your contract at Cardiff, I believe it was, it became apparent pretty quickly that a permanent deal was going to be quite difficult to organise. Supporters had started to read between the lines regarding the club's finances, and a couple even went as far as to launch a bit of a crowdfund to put towards any potential transfer fee. So at that time, do you think Bolton were perhaps a case of being right club at the wrong time? And what goes through not just the football player's mind, but a human being's mind when you hear about something like the online crowdfund?
The last game after Birmingham, my last game, I walked into his office afterwards and said, look, when are you signing me for next season? Because I want to come back on loan. I said, look, when are we signing? And he said, look, I'll ring you tomorrow. We'll speak to your agent tomorrow. So obviously I was looking to sign on the 6th of May for the season after. So for me, it was a point of, there was no other club I was going to apart from Bolton at that time, because I'd loved my time there that much and enjoyed playing with Lenny. Then obviously it dragged out throughout that window, and they were still signing players. So for me, I felt like, what's going on here? Like, you can get me on loan here, and I've just done that for you. What's going on? And obviously Phil Gartside was still around then. Obviously, rest in peace for him. But I think my agent was dealing with Phil and obviously Lenny. Lenny was like fuming because nothing was happening. And I was like, look, I've got other clubs who want to sign me. And so this went on for like 5 weeks into pre-season. I only moved to Wolves 3 days before the season start when, it became very apparent that Bolton weren't going to come in for me. And to me, it sort of broke my heart a little bit because I knew what sort of season I would have had at Bolton. I knew it by the season before it. So it sort of that's why I was waiting so long in pre-season to do that. So I just thought, if they can muster up whatever the contribution was to get me on loan, then, I'll do the rest. Do you know what I mean? It'll be worth it, sort of thing. But obviously, I was so confident at that time that I knew I was justified in saying that. And obviously, the fans were, right behind that as well. But obviously, me having a great time there and the fans loving me for that, that made me more persuasive to what come back. If I had a crap time and the fans hated me, obviously, I wouldn't have come back. Do you know what I mean? So, for a player, it sort of gives me even more confidence and made it easier for me to come back the second time, because I was still getting messages to come back a year and a half later. Come back, save us, get us up, etc., etc. Like, for me as a striker, that's all I wanted. I'm a striker who wants to be loved, because I want that tag of being the hero, because predominantly I score crucial goals. So when I get the opportunity to, reciprocate that with fans, it's something special. And I've been lucky to share a special bond with the fan groups of Rotherham, Reading, and Bolton and Sydney. Because I've had such great times there, and we shared great moments together.
And like you say there, the relationship with the fans, there's not actually too many players in recent memory that actually get sort of the love, for want of a better term, that the fans showed you, because as you well know from abuse hurled at other players, we're not always the most forgiving type. So you ended up, as you said before, you ended up at Wolves the following season after Bolton couldn't, or eventually decided not to come back in for you. And after a brief return to Cardiff the start of the following season, we know you were sort of pushed into training with the reserves and you were brought back in for a few weeks. You were loaned to Wigan for the first half of that season. Again, that was a move that didn't quite turn out the way you probably would have hoped it would have done. But after reviving your career during that first sort of 6-month spell at Bolton, do you feel that maybe perhaps it was your most difficult spell following that? Like, say, going to Wolves, going back to Cardiff, going back to Wigan, not having good times. It's obvious from watching you over the years that all you want to do is play football. So again, just to repeat what I said a moment ago, from that 6-month spell at Bolton where you had the highs, wanted to stay, to then going through 18 months or so of it on the way back down, does that maybe class as one of your most difficult spells in professional football?
Yeah, definitely the Wolves period. For me, the reason I didn't really jump at the Wolves at the start is because the manager at the time, I didn't think would use me in front of Benicophobia and Nuadico, and I wanted to play, obviously, and he assured me I was going to play games. So I was sort of putting it off, and I just said, look, I think you're going to play your contracted strikers ahead of a loan striker, because sometimes, in a lot of instances, clubs do that to promote them, to sell them. So I was like, I'm not sure you're going to play me. And he's like, no, we will. We definitely will play you. So obviously when I realised Bolton were not going to come back in for me, I sort of had to make a decision. Whereas probably the regret for me is either not staying at Cardiff, really, because the manager at the time, Russell Slade, he wanted me to, rejoin the first team after my spell at Bolton. He wanted me to join back in with the first team and obviously be a part of the squad and be obviously the main player in the squad again. But for me, my mind was made up, obviously selfishly, because I wanted to come back to Bolton. So I was like, no, I want to leave. My mind's made up. I want to go. And then when it come back to it, I was between Wolves and staying in the under-23s. And then I had Chef Wednesday come in as well. But I was probably foolish not really to go and speak to Chef Wednesday and sort of just stuck with it, because Wolves have sort of, hung around there and, sort of begged me to come. And inevitably, I had a terrible time there. I didn't, whatever I said came to fruition. I didn't play. We didn't play attractive football. We didn't get me in positions where, when I did play, where I could score and affect the game. And I just didn't enjoy it. The lads were fantastic. The facilities were amazing, and some of the staff were great as well. But ultimately, I didn't play enough for me. And I think if you look back on that season, I think maybe I start 3 games in a row, maybe 4 at a push that season. For me, it's not enough, especially when there's no other recognised strikers at the club who were behind me at the time. So in January, I tried getting out, and they wouldn't terminate my loan. They wanted to keep me and said I was going to play, and then I didn't again. So I didn't play all season. So that was a waste. That was a waste of 12 months. It was wasted the 6 months I did prior at Bolton. All the good work I did. Scoring goals, getting my reputation back to where it was, for it to just, go down the drain really with a poor loan spell at Wolves. Granted, my performances weren't great, probably, but I weren't enjoying my football, and the football we played weren't great either, so it weren't putting me in the positions to score and have a fruitful spell. And then obviously the Wigan one, I had Huddersfield just before that, and then they backed out after someone badmouthed me to them. So then I ended up going to Wigan, and someone tried to badmouth me again to Wigan. And then Cardiff nearly put me back in the squad. I was on the bench for the last game before the window shut. So realistically, I should have stayed at Cardiff again, really, and fought it out there for that season. But I didn't. I went to Wigan because my family home's obviously up north, and they were training at Exton. It's 45 minutes from my house. I probably took the easy option, really. And it was good at the start. I liked the squad. Gary Caldwell was a good manager. He was very honest. I understood I was in a struggling team, but they wanted to play the right way. I scored against Wolves in one of my first starts. And then, the manager changed, and, his philosophy was totally different. And I soon realised I weren't going to play for him. I think I played one game for him, and then I was out. And then I didn't play again, and I just said, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing another loan spell where I don't play for the whole season. I can't afford to do that. So obviously, I got my loan terminated at Wigan because Bolton was Lee Anderson at the time was haranguing me by text to sign and join obviously the revolution at Bolton.
That does bring us on to the next section. So January 2017, it was transfer deadline day, and from a fan's perspective at least, seemingly out of nowhere, the rumours started to surface quite late in the day about the possibility of your actually terminating your loan at Wigan, which was just mentioned happened, but not just doing that, but also coming back to Bolton. We began the podcast by talking about your initial move to us in 2015, but as much as you've just mentioned the Wigan side of it and dropped in on Mr. Anderson there, how did the second move actually come around? Because remember, Bolton were a League One club at the time. You've just said you didn't want to spend a second season not really playing. Was that the ultimate reason for you coming back regardless of the drop in division? Or was it maybe your previous experience at Bolton, albeit under different ownership, different management, that swayed that decision?
Well, obviously, assessed the squad, and to be fair, they came in for me at the start of the season as well, but they couldn't do it with the embargo. Then, I should have been signed before the deadline day, but the embargo and sorting things out, they couldn't quite do that until the last day. For me, to come back to the squad was not much change from the champ squad. So for me, I felt like if I go down with Bolton, I'm coming straight back up anyway. They had me and Gaz, then we're coming straight back up. I seen that was like a no-brainer. I weren't joining any other League One team apart from Bolton because I knew they were getting promoted. Because I knew obviously Sheffield United were getting promoted, and I knew we were getting promoted. So for me, it felt like I'm not dropping out of the Championship. I'm just, dipping my toes in to get back in it, and that's what it felt like for me. I'll go there, score goals, and then we're back in the champ again. Like that was my thinking and around it. And I was quite lucky really because that's what happened. But I was glad with what I did there. When I came back to Bolton the second time, I didn't quite hit the ground running because, like I said, I just not played. I've not played for probably 2 months actually since the new manager took over at Wigan. So I'd not played any games. I was playing left wing 10 minutes here and there. And I weren't fit really. I weren't fit for probably the first month of the season when I come back in January. So it would have been February at that time. So I was still sort of finding my feet and, obviously to get the pressure off, me as a player, I want to score straight away. And it didn't quite happen straight away. But then obviously once the first one went in, it sort of, got easier after that.
Well, that first one was in a game at Fleetwood. At the time, Bolton and Fleetwood were sort of battling out along with, I think it was Bradford at the time for maybe second place. Sheffield United had established a little bit of a lead at the top at the time. You said it took you maybe a month or so to get going. That brought us on to the Fleetwood game that I just mentioned. You scored twice that day. As a supporter, that was a game where really we started to believe again. We'd had a bad run of results in maybe the 4 or 6 weeks before that one, after actually going into the new year in the promotion places. So as much as that was sort of a day where the fans started to believe again, do you think that was a day where not just yourself, but the team were given that confidence boost that was needed for that final stretch, those last couple of months of the season?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a good shot in the arm for us. Obviously, they were on a run at the time of so many unbeaten, and they were the form team and all this. And, it was actually a really good game of football as well, which was quite surprising, really, because obviously normally when you expect to drop down, you expect it to be a bit more, blood and thunder. But it was a great game, and we were lucky. Well, we weren't lucky, but I'd say we probably played our best performance that game. It was lucky that we used that best performance for that game to, probably killed them off after that, really, to be fair, because, obviously they carried on for the season and came close, but, it sort of gave us the mental edge over everything else. And, we sort of knew after that it was ours for the taking as long as we kept performing at the level we showed we could do it against Fleetwood.
You mentioned earlier on when you thought coming back for the second time, you might have had the chance to play with Zach Clough again, with Ameobi on one side, Phil Morace on the other side. That Fleetwood game was a day where Morace got a hat-trick of assists. And if memory serves me correctly, I think he got 4 assists the following game as well. Yeah. So what was it like to be on the receiving end of somebody that can just whip a ball into the box with so much ease? Like yourself, Morace actually only had that half season, that second half of season with us in League One. But he ended the season in double figures with assists. And a lot of players don't even get that in 2 seasons, never mind 1. So having that quality out wide, what's that like as a striker? Does it make your job easier, or is there a little bit more pressure on you as such because the deliveries are so much better than what you might normally be used to?
No, for me, any winger who crosses the ball, I love. I had it with Fino in the first spell, and then Phil is get it out of his feet, whip it, and I'll be across the near stick. And for me, I love playing with Phil. He put a lot of great balls in the box, and obviously he was great from set plays as well. We've got a lot of tall timber, so he was finding Wheats's bald patch and hitting beeves and stuff like that. So you hit them big giants on the head, and invariably it goes in. So you can see why he got so many assists, because he was whipping balls to me and Gaz, who were decent, accomplished strikers, and and he's got the big monsters coming up for corners and set pieces, and he's got a very good delivery from both. So he's putting them on plates for us, and we just got to do the rest, really.
So there were some memorable moments the second half of that season, Fleetwood obviously being one of those, but we saved the best for last. That was the win over Peterborough on the final day of the season that got us promoted as runners-up in League One. Now, there was a party atmosphere that day, even before kick-off, and even a pitch invasion to finish with, which, to my knowledge, was the first time we'd seen one at that stadium. After a few stuttering results, because after beating Southend a few weeks earlier, we all thought we'd have been up with 4 or 5 games to go. What was the mood like in the week leading up to that Peterborough game? And just how much of a relief, if that's the right word, was it to actually get that result?
I think we're all quite calm, to be fair. If you look back at the squad, we're all very experienced players who played higher levels. So we all sort of knew that it was in our hands. It was never really out of our hands in the situation. So I think everything was obviously there's going to be nerves and stuff like that. But I think for the majority of us, it was just a case of, if we turn up and play our game, then there's not many teams in the division who can cope with us. And a Peterborough team who were on the holidays pretty much. We obviously, a lot in the end of season games, it's if you've got something to play for, normally you're the team that comes out on top because your will imparts over theirs. So, we had to just obviously have the same endeavour as we always had done for the second part of that season. And, sort of run over the top of them. And that's what we did, really.
Yeah, because I think going into the game, obviously Peterborough had beaten us earlier in the season. You never really knew which team was going to turn up for Peterborough. On the day, they were capable of promotion, just like quite a few other teams, but they just weren't consistent enough. So I think getting the goal quite early on. I think it was sort of midway through the first half, sort of settled the nerves, and there was no looking back from there, really, was there?
I think if you get the first goal in them games, it always, settles everyone down. Obviously, the crowd can obviously relax a little bit more, and everyone else can grow into the game. Jem scored a great goal, and we sort of took it on from there.
Well, after that game, for the second time in 3 years, your loan was up, and Bolton fans were quite literally begging you on social media to stay. They still do it to this day, don't they? So the one big difference this time was that your contract at Cardiff was up, so there was no fee required. Was there ever any doubt this time, in your mind at least, that you'd be staying permanently? Because from an outsider's point of view looking in, it just seemed as though everything this time around just fell into place.
Yeah, there was a few other clubs who did come in, but obviously my first port of call was obviously Bolton. I just had a real enjoyable spell. Just scored goals again, got back on the goal trail. We just got promotion. So, I was not really looking anywhere else, but a couple of other clubs did come sniffing. And, obviously in that when you're out of contract, it's always nice to have different offers and different opportunities. But, for me, I didn't really want to go anywhere else other than Bolton. And Parky really chased me hard as well to sign me as well, which is what I wanted from the manager at the time. So like I said, I don't think there was anywhere else I was going to go that summer. I think that was just the fact that I've loved my time there, really enjoyed what we've done. Let's go and do it in the Champ.
And you say there, Phil Parkinson sort of really pushed hard to get you to sign. Well, we struggled on our return to the Championship, and a changing system saw you watching on from the bench for most of the first half of that season, with Gary Medine playing up front on his own. You scored 7 goals that season, again, if the research is correct there, and 6 of those actually came from February onwards after Medine had been sold to, quite ironically, your former employers, Cardiff. Yeah. Was there ever any sense of regret that you joined and not played as often as you'd hoped? Or did you just have to sit back and admire the form that Gary Medine was in? You said yourself, Parky pushed quite hard to sign you. So changing the system so soon, was that quite a big sort of blow to your confidence, really? And like I say, was there ever any sort of sense of regret that maybe you'd just made that wrong decision again?
Yeah, definitely. I started the first game against Leeds, scored, and then played against Millwall and got brought up after 60. And then I think we played the Cup and I was rested for the Cup. And then the next minute, I didn't play till Sheffield United away just after Christmas. So for me, and obviously we weren't picking up great results either. It weren't as if we were winning every week and stuff like that. So for me as a striker, sitting on the sideline, I was like, surely I'm gonna get a chance at least. But I think obviously I mustn't have done enough for him when I've come on as sub and to earn that starting berth. But I always felt like if I played up front with Gaz, then we'd give any team in the Championship problems. But obviously I don't think he was sort of in his remit to play a 2 up top at the top of the pitch. So obviously that's what it was really. I was bitterly disappointed for the majority of that season because I didn't play. And then come to January, and I was looking to leave. I was looking to go out on loan and play somewhere else. I just wanted to, like I say, for me as a player, I just want to play. I want to play regular games because I know if I play regular games, I'll score goals. That's me in a nutshell. If I play games, I score goals. And I said that to the manager at the time. I said, look, I need to play. And he was like, okay, we'll sort of think about it, about letting you go and stuff. And then obviously Gary went near enough deadline day. So I just went, sort of held my horses and went, okay, I might play now. And then I was still sort of in and out until for, I don't know, probably about 3 or 4 games really. I was sort of in and out and then, sort of nailed it down, after that and, started scoring goals when I started playing regularly. It's sort of true to my word, really. When I started playing a bit more regularly, then, I started finding my form again and started scoring goals again.
Well, fortunately, things improved on a personal note for you in the second half of that season, but also for the team. For long periods, it did look like we were going to drop into League One again, but the season ended on a high as we came from behind to beat Forest on the final day. Aaron Wilbraham took the headlines, but his pre-match inclusion on the team sheet with you on the bench had pretty much every single fan shaking their heads in disbelief. You came on as a sub with half an hour to play, scored one after about 5 minutes of being on the pitch, and then you set up the other two. So just talk me through from start to finish, low to high, talk me through the emotions of that day, because it was a real roller coaster from the team selection to obviously going 1-0 up, 10 minutes to go, being 2-1 down. That's a stage where Bolton fans historically would maybe sort of turn. It was an eerie atmosphere, that 5-6 minute spell. It was just sort of an air of resignation, acceptance. It was just silence. And then, obviously, those last few minutes, scenes that we're probably unlikely to see again for a long, long time. So just talk us through that day.
Yeah, well, obviously with Friday, I found out Friday I weren't playing, and me and the gaffer had a disagreement. Obviously, as you'd expect, obviously I was unhappy not to play, and the do or die game sort of thing. So obviously I've came to the match. As a professional, you have to shrug these things off. As a player, you have to deal with setbacks, and obviously the greater goal for me was staying up. As a player, was staying up. So I had to get my head around the fact that I weren't starting. But obviously, come the next day, come the match day, I was ready, obviously, to do whenever I'm called up to come on and do my job. And obviously, I could see how the game was going. We had a lot of chances. They had a lot of chances. It was a very open game. And I was obviously like licking my lips on the side. I was thinking, come on, I'm going to score here. Like, this game's made for me. Then obviously I got through on, and then I think Carl Henry shanked a shot. It's a defender. It's come back to me, and I'll put it straight in. And obviously the stadium's just erupted. Everything's just gone mental, and I'm running around the pitch like a madman. And then 5 minutes later, we're all like, "Oh, okay, we're 2-1 down," and it's like, "Oh, all right, it's gone real flat round here, real quick." Like, and even for the boys, it was. And then obviously the last few minutes we were throwing everything up. Big Wheats has gone up front. I think Albie won the flick on. Wheats won the flick on. Albie's knocked it inside to me. I've laid it off to Wheats, and finally Wheats scored his first goal of the season. And we were like, okay, yeah, we believe now. Like, everyone's going mental. Everyone's thinking, can we? And then Chomps boomed a goal kick, low as anything. But it's just gone. It seems to have gone miles with a little flick from Carl. I've managed to get down the side of Obsy and clip it, and Albie's with a great header has put it obviously across the keeper. And it's quite hard to describe the feeling when that went in. I think you can see by all the boys flying everywhere, and I think if you watch me on the video, I just run off on my own and I go to my family where they were in a box not far on that side, and I'm just stood in front of them in the box celebrating. And I can just picture all my whole family throwing their arms up. Everyone's going mental. It just seems like there's only me and them in the stadium at the time, and I'm just going mad on my own. And then obviously, the game blows up, and I sort of sink to the floor. It's sort of like in disbelief, really, that what we accomplished. I did a podcast with Reading, some Reading fans, and I said there's a game I played for them against Southampton, and then I said I referred back to the Bolton game and said, like, them two games for me stick out more than any. They'll never be beat in my achievements, because just the raw emotion that comes with them games. The first game, obviously, we took Reading to the Premier League, but this is obviously a total different end of the spectrum, where everyone thought we were dead and buried before the game. Everyone, even the fans, like, being realistic as a fan, they probably thought, because we got beat at Burton the week before, they were probably thinking, oh, the bunch of shitbags, they turned it in. We're not going to do out today. Like, we sort of accept that we're going to get relegated in the situation we are, because that's a fan's perspective, and you can totally see that, because we were probably 23rd at the time at the start of play, and everyone's thinking, oh, Barnsley are going to stay up, or Burton's going to stay up. Let's see how they do. And then to come out on top at the end of that was crazy. It's still mad to think about now. I was in the dressing room afterwards, and I was sat with GM, like me and him were celebrating together. But we're just sat there and we're going, "What the fuck's just happened?" Sorry for the language, but literally it was that word for word. That we were literally just sat there going, "What the fuck just happened out there?" Like we're like holding our heads, everyone's going mad, and we're like just a moment to ourselves, like this is crazy. Like it was unbelievable. Honestly, I can't describe the feeling. It was great. It's like it's way more than like euphoria or anything like that. It was just, I'm sure obviously the fans obviously and you as well went through it as well. You know, you probably tasted the lows and highs worse than us in that game, because you know what was in the game can sort of disassociate from, you know, the immediate result of that, of what's going to happen. We still had belief that we'd get in the game, whereas as a fan you start thinking, oh, for fuck's sake, it's done now, we're definitely done. And then obviously you get a sigh of relief with Wheats, and then obviously when Albie scores, everyone, just like the emotions in that game is incredible. And I think, you know, as a player, I'll probably never achieve anything, you know, or experience anything probably come close to that ever again. Other than them 2 games in my career, I don't think emotionally I'll ever get close to achieving anything like that.
There's a lot of people that have been in that stadium. Speaking on behalf of myself here, been season ticket holder for 20 years now. Obviously, there's people that have been there longer than that. We've had some real highs in that stadium. Not going to talk about the good times at Burnden Park. Let's just focus on the current ground. Some real highs. Obviously, playoff success in the early days, getting promoted to the Premier League. We've beaten all the top clubs at the Reebok, as was. We've played in Europe. Obviously, promotion out of League One, and then that day beating Forest. And I think the Forest game ranks up there just as much as those nights in Europe. UEFA Cup is, or the Europa League as it is now, sort of frowned upon amongst the casual supporter. But for a smaller club who had the opportunity to play in that, it's nothing to be taken away. So getting a result to stay up in the second tier, to compare that to playing teams such as Marseille, Zenit St. Petersburg, a few others that we can name at home as well, it just shows how important that day was in the end. So I think this is probably going to be the stupid question, but in your opinion, promotion or staying up the following season?
Staying up all day. Way better feeling.
I think everyone's going to agree with you.
We were expected to get promoted. We weren't expected to stay up that day. So that's why it makes it even better.
Yeah, completely agree with you. And I think everybody else would as well. So we'll move it on to the following season now. And rather unfortunate, really, you only played one more game in a Wanderers shirt after that day. And that was as a late sub in a draw with Bristol City at the start of the 18-19 season. It was the following week that news of your move to Sydney broke, and rather bizarrely, it happened in the middle of a cup game when we were playing away at Leeds. A major move like that obviously takes time to complete. It's not something that was done overnight, but what did you make of the actual timing of the announcement? Does it make any difference to you as a player, or did it seem a little bit weird that it was done in the middle of an actual match?
Yeah, obviously it was a little bit odd how it was leaked. I guess obviously I would have preferred, you know, a better goodbye sort of thing. You know, obviously they're playing in the middle of a game, so it would have been nicer on nicer terms. But, you know, the fans still poured out with... It didn't waver my feeling towards the club as it was. It was just a strange way to announce it, I thought. You know, that's all I can say around. It's just a real strange way to announce it. Am I going to cry about it? No. I'm a grown man. It's sort of water off a duck's back, that sort of thing. But it would have been a little bit nicer if they would have waited a day and, you know, just done it in the day after the game or whatever like that. Do you know what I mean? But I guess they didn't want I don't know, maybe a little bit of backlash or whatever they thought they were going to get from it. So, you know, obviously there was no sort of ill feeling. It was just obviously just like I say, a strange, you know, announcement really for me.
Yeah, and I think just recalling back at the time, obviously from reporting on the game, there was no real rumours. We all knew, obviously, you weren't in the squad, you weren't playing, but you played for us 2 or 3 days earlier. Like I said, there was no sort of indication that you were leaving. It just seemed like, well, what's happened here? So we'll end that there because there's no point, like you say, there's no point dwelling on that. I asked you earlier on about Neil Lennon and what he was like as a manager. And I'm going to do the same with Phil Parkinson now. So I think we had a bit of an up and down relationship with him. Players did, fans did. And he'll be looked back on eventually. I think history will be kind to him because of the circumstances he had to work under. But how would you describe him, first of all, as a manager, but then also with those conditions and the ownership regime he had to work under? How would you describe him as a man as well?
Yeah, and obviously, I think when I was there, results speak for itself. He won promotion and obviously stayed up on the last day, so he can't be a bad manager. Me looking from the outside in, he's obviously done a good job. Me as a player for him, I enjoyed it when I was playing. When he signed me, he said really nice things, flattering things to me to sign me, and it just sort of didn't work out. We couldn't sort of play 3-5-2 in the champ, or he mustn't have thought we could play 3-5-2 in the champ. So he went to 4-3-3, and obviously his archetype up top was obviously Big Gaz. So for me, it pushed me out of the squad, and not really many opportunities. So obviously, I just wanted to play. So I found him okay to deal with. The only thing which I said to him was when obviously there was some games when I was meant to start, I'd find out, the day of the game, that I weren't playing on the pitch before. So obviously that for me as a player is quite hard to take. I'd prefer, having, him come the day before and say, look, I've made a decision, you're not going to play. I'm going to go with this. And, as a player like the Forest game, it's hard to accept straight away, but then, the day later it's forgotten about because you're going for one goal, you're going to win the game. That's the aim of the 16, 18 man squad. That's the sort of thing I had to do at Reading, where I sort of accepted the fact that I weren't going to play, but I'm still going to affect the game when I come on. And I never really, got that from him. It was sort of like, you might be starting this weekend, and then find out on the day I'm not starting. So for me, I was always backpedaling against myself and thinking like, what's going on? And then obviously when I got back into the team, it was all fine. And then, I found him, quite a good manager, to be fair to him. There was obviously instances where we didn't get on, and that happens with football. Relationships are not meant to be perfect. And as a man, he was fine as well. He wasn't obviously. He was an honest person with me, and when I went to Sydney, he was fantastic with it. When I went in and seen him, I seen him before the Leeds game because I was meant to be starting that game. And I said, "Can you rip my contract up, please?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, that's fine." He said, "Obviously, with what you've done for the club, and we fully respect that, and we value you here, but obviously, we'll let you go because of what you've done and obviously what you want to achieve for going forward," sort of thing. And I can't thank him enough for that, because obviously other managers could just said, "Nah, you're not going anywhere. You stay here. You still got another year left, possibly another year after that if you reach the trigger in your contract. So why would I let you go?" sort of thing. So obviously I thanked him for that, because that was very gracious for him to do.
Yeah, and again, as a supporter, when you hear the words like yours there, sort of, "Can you rip my contract up?" it can be misconstrued as an unhappy player, a bit of a troublemaker, but obviously everyone knows the real reasons behind you wanting to go. No one can begrudge you a move to not just the club, but the place like Sydney as well. So we'll end time at Bolton there, and we'll quickly just move on to a couple of extra questions about your career since leaving Bolton, because I have to ask you about Sydney and then the upcoming Indian Super League season as well. What's been the motivation for those moves, and what's left for you to achieve? Because at this stage of your career, Is it about having the opportunity to travel the world, obviously winning trophies in other countries? And would you maybe like to finish your career off with one final run in England? Maybe somewhere in the northwest, not necessarily Bolton, but is the plan maybe to have another few years, maybe again continuing to travel the world, or is that one last run maybe still on the table somewhere?
Yeah, for me, the motivation was to play games. The reason for me going to Sydney, yeah, it was a great life changing opportunity. But I sort of read the situation where I didn't want to get in the same situation as I got myself in Wolves at Bolton, and the season before where I didn't play for 6 months. So I didn't play against West Brom in the first game after I played the whole pre-season scoring goals and being the main striker, and then obviously not to play in that game and then the home game against Bristol. It sort of twigged in my mind that I'm not really going to play again. And I didn't want to do that, so I wanted to go and play. I wanted to go and experience things, and I've always wanted to play abroad, if it was the MLS or the A League. And the A League came forward, and when Sydney obviously did get speaking properly, then I jumped at the chance to move to them. And I really like the experiencing different cultures and living abroad as well. It really does broaden your horizons, and you look at things differently. What I've got left, I don't know. I want to play till I drop, so I still think I'll score goals no matter how old I am. So there's definitely a lot of life left in me. But what I do next, obviously, I'm really looking forward to the season in the Indian Super League. So I'll see how that goes. Ideally, I would like to finish in England in my career, but you never know where football's going to take you as a footballer. I wouldn't rule out coming back to England, but then I wouldn't rule out me never coming back to England playing football. So, you know what I mean? It's a different landscape completely now, especially with COVID and how things are moving forward in the world. So, romantically, I would like to, have one last season in England before I retire. But can I see it happening? Yeah. Can I see it not happening? Yeah. So, do you know what I mean? It's quite easy for me to say that, I'll just finish my career playing abroad somewhere. But then it is quite easy for me to say, yeah, I could finish in England as well. It's just depends what happens, at that time. It's the right place at the right time, and aligning my targets and goals at that time and what I'm thinking and how my body's feeling, I guess. And if a club will take me as well, depending on how old I am.
Well, fingers crossed, all being well. You've been quite lucky, I think, sort of avoiding serious injuries throughout your career. So, again, all being well, hopefully that continues and you still have another few years in your legs yet.
Yeah, touch wood.
Touch wood, indeed. A few weeks ago, you put a picture up on social media. You're actually back in Bolton, and that was before, obviously, you flew out to India. Naturally, that got people talking. And the following day, I think it was, your second cousin, if we're sort of getting the terminology right there, was in the Wanderers team for a EFL trophy tie at Shrewsbury, or as the new sponsorship has now been revealed, the Papa John's Trophy. Had he played that day, he'd have broken a record that has stood for nearly 70 years and become the youngest ever senior player for Bolton at just 15. Unfortunately for him, he never made it onto the field, and I think at the time of this recording, that record is about to go.
Yeah.
So we know little about him. Obviously, for the fans, he's just a 15-year-old teenager at the moment. There's not an awful lot there about him. So what sort of insight can you maybe give into his game? And obviously, you're going to be on his side from the family point of view, but what are his chances looking like maybe in another year or two in terms of making that next step up?
Well, I can categorically say he's going to make that step up. He's definitely going to make it as a professional footballer. He's got all the tools that a modern day footballer needs. He's got a great engine, either foot, and he scores goals from midfield. I think if you look at the under-18s reports, you'll see the Fondre's littered in there for goals, and he's a 15-year-old playing with under-18. So he's definitely got an exciting future ahead of him. And I'm really looking forward to watching him. Obviously as my career dwindles down, it'll be exciting to watch him and his rise. And I speak to him semi-regularly and speak to his dad as well. And I've said to him, I'm always here if he wants to speak to me and talk to me about anything I've gone through in my career, because obviously as a young player coming through, I think for me, I would have loved something like that. So I would have loved someone to just lean on and say, oh, did you have that experience, etc., etc. So it's been nice to be able to speak to him and him asking advice. When I drove him up that day, he was asking a lot of questions about making his debut, and obviously you could see he was nervous but excited as well. And I think it won't be long before he is playing for the first team, because he's got bags of ability. So I expect big things from him in the future, and I'm sure he expects it of himself as well.
And he might actually get that chance in a few weeks' time. Bolton, they're already out of the EFL trophy with another game still to play in the group. So we're playing Newcastle's under-21s at home. No pressure. Why not give a young boy a chance? So we'll finish with something that we call quickfire Q&A. I've got 4 questions, and your answers can only be related to your time at Bolton only. Okay, just quickly run through them, then we'll go through them one at a time. That is your best manager, best player, teammate, that is best opponent. That can be from any stage in your career. And then I think I already know the answer for this one, but your favourite memory as well. So we'll start off with first one. You've got 2 to choose from, Lennon and Parkinson. Best manager in your opinion?
Lennon.
And best player or best teammate?
I go Big Emil.
And again, this one doesn't have to necessarily be from Bolton, because we know you played in the Premier League a step above or 2 steps above where you were when you were at Bolton. But best opponent?
Rooney.
Sort of flip that around. Yeah, go on. I was just going to say that, to sort of flip it around. We'll go with Rooney, but who would you also say might have been the toughest defender you came up against?
Terry. When he was at Chelsea. And
then, again, I think I know what your answer is going to be for this one, but your favourite memory of your time at Bolton?
Yeah, definitely staying up on the last day, without a shadow of a doubt. Like I said, it's in one of my best moments of my career as a whole, so it's not going to get left off this. Okay, so that brings an end to the show. But before we do go, Alfie, do you have a message for the Bolton supporters who are watching or maybe listening to this on the podcast? Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for all the well wishes and the come back home king and all that sort of stuff I get, and all the love I get, except from Wes, and all the hate I get from him. But yeah, the fans have been fantastic with me. I can't thank them enough for all the well wishes they've given me over my career, and obviously even so now in Goa when I'm playing for Mumbai. So they're still always on my timeline begging me to come back and stuff. And I love seeing that sort of stuff. We shared some great memories together, and I can't thank them enough for welcoming me warmly as well. So all the best for the season, I guess. And that is it. So whether you're watching the podcast live on Facebook, YouTube, our website at burndenaces.co.uk, or listening via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to like, share and subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes drop. A full listing of previous shows is available to stream on each of those platforms, but for now, huge thank you to Adam Fondre. Cheers, Adam. I've been Chris Mann, and I will see you next time.